Welcome, everybody. It's time for another episode of Closing the Wealth Gap. You know, there's a widening wealth gap between the haves and have-nots. Many of us feel it more than ever. So which side of the divide are you on? And how do you bridge that gap and gain greater economic control, freedom, and security for yourself in a world that seems to be out of control? That's why we created this show, Closing the Wealth Gap, the only show with weekly workable tips, ideas, and suggestions for average income earners like you on how to regain control of your financial future. With the man who's helped many, Tyrone French. Hey, Tyrone.
Hey, Paul. How you doing today, buddy?
Oh, I tell you what, it's the new year, in 2019. I'm already scared. I'm looking at turmoil in the markets. I'm looking at political chaos, shutdowns. I'm looking at trade wars with China. And everywhere I go, people are saying, look out, something's coming, slow down, recession.
I'm hearing the same talk, and I call it chatter, the same chatter.
And it's scaring the hell out of me.
It's scaring a lot of people, and they're reacting to it. But here's the thing. This show today is going to be about my ultimate success formula. And what that means is that people they tend to react to the circumstances. They tend to react to the form.
How can you not when everything you pick up, everybody? And it's funny how it starts a wave. I would say a month ago, before the holidays, yeah, there's been a little persistent thing. The stock market may be a little, getting a little old, and the feds are raising the rates. Okay, we're going to have some sort of gradual easing and things. But hey, Chapman locally here, Cal State Fullerton came out with their economic report a month or so ago and said, hey, don't fear it. We got 2019 strong. Maybe 2020, whatever. You can look at some things, but 2019 was looking strong. All of a sudden, in a month, the stock market went through some wild gyrations. The federal government shut down. China and the U.S. said, we're not sure what's going to happen in the trade war thing here. Fed says they're not going to sure what they're going to do. And we got all this crazy information. Jobs are up, but manufacturing report was down. In a month, I have seen so much chaos and confusion hit the news that I don't know what to do with it.
Well, I tell you, wealthy people, it doesn't matter if the stock market is going up, going down. So you have your own personal economy that you manage.
I only laugh because you're right. You said earlier before the show, hey, whether the market goes up or down, whether the economy slows or grows, the top 5% knows how to make money.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter whether it's going up, whether it's going down. So here's the thing. Stop focusing on the circumstances, because you create your reality. You create your reality based on what you think, the ideas that you act on, that you manifest. So the issue is when you begin it's based on suggestions. And if you hear something long enough or enough times, you begin to believe, say, hey, wait a minute.
Look out.
It's coming. And so it's almost like saying that, fear can actually kill a person faster than a bullet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
People, you can find somebody and say, hey, Tom, how you doing, man? You don't look too well today. Tom was feeling fine before you make that suggestion.
Right. Now, what's wrong?
Now he's in the bathroom, checking his eyes, and it's like, well, I do have this cough,
But it goes back to the underlying premise of this show. How do you gain control? How do you close the wealth gap? And for many of us, we feel like we have no control. We are at the mercy of others. We're at the mercy of these market forces. We're at the mercy of the political forces. We're at the mercy of consumer confidence. We're at the mercy of all these things that I can't change, and all I can do is try and adapt and ride them out.
But Paul, that's the nature of this show is to get people to change their perceptions. Because when you start thinking that you don't have control, if you're losing control, that's a mindset. See, the day is neutral. Every day on this planet is neutral. It's neither good nor bad. What makes it good or bad? Your attitude, your perception.
But aren't there's some circumstance. I mean, if I got hit by a car today, that would be, God forbid, that'd be a bad thing.
But accidents don't just happen.
Really?
They don't. It's a cause and effect relationship. So when you do find an accident, there's an examiner or an investigator trying to figure out what caused this accident so that we can stop it from happening again.
And clearly, as the wealthy do, we have another investment show that talks about real high-level investments, hedge fund kind of stuff that you and I don't have access to. And one of the things is they hedge against downturns. So they're for every up or down cycle, there is a correct move.
All it means is that they're betting on both sides.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
They're betting on both sides.
They're betting on black and red and roulette.
Yes. Why? Because they have enough money to do it. Just like going to Vegas. Right. The house is never going to. They're never going to lose. Why?
That's true.
Why? They're playing the odds, and they know what the odds are.
Right. And so I'm just saying that. So, for example, I'm not sure I can quite go there where you're saying that if a car accident happens tomorrow to me, somehow there's I brought that on myself. I don't know if I quite believe that, but maybe I did because I wasn't paying attention or I was afraid or whatever. But there are ways to hedge against that. So I have car insurance, for example. So I'm not without a car if my car gets disabled. I have health insurance. I have other sorts of protective measures I put in place to prevent big losses. But I don't have many protective things in place to take advantage of big gains.
Well, go back as far as the accident or the car accident or somebody got hit by a car or whatever. And like you said,
right.
Sometimes people lose focus. They're text messaging. They're on the phone.
Oh, yeah.
They missed the sign. They didn't see that the light was turning red. It was yellow. And they decided to take a chance and blow through the intersection when at the same time somebody else is trying to jump the light because they're late for work.
Right.
So I'm just saying that in accidents, to me, there's no such thing as an accident. These are results of a cause.
Well, let me give you another example. Let's get real here.
Yeah.
We live in a very chaotic political time right now here. No question about it. Every day, chaos, controversy, confusion seems to reign. And whether you like him or not, there's a president who seems to thrive on that and seems to it invigorates him. It certainly energizes his base. I'll admit I'm not one of them, but
it's driving the economy right now.
But they're driving the economy right now, and it's based on fear. Fear of a change in America, fear of loss of greatness, fear of loss of manufacturing, fear of changes that are out of people's control. And the manifestation of that isn't just an angry political body that says, we're tired of change. I didn't vote for change. I don't want change. I don't want anything to change. Take a look at the opioid and the suicide. For the first time in my lifetime, the average life expectancy went down.
It went down. It's dropping.
Not because people are getting sicker suddenly, but because people are dying because of stress and heart attacks and suicide.
The 10th.
And all of those go to tension, anxiety, fear, and a feeling of hopelessness. I can't control things.
As far as people dying in the United States, suicide is 10th on the list.
Yeah,
it's 10th on the list.
Right.
So when people talk about
a totally preventable one, you would think.
So when people talk about fear, like we said, this atmosphere of fear is permeating.
Yeah, right.
Our society right now. A lot of times when you look at fear, you think, well, the opposite side of fear is courage. But actually, it's confidence.
Say that again. All right. So, because you would think there are those, we're all standing in a foxhole and we're afraid we're going to get shot. Somebody's courageous and jumps up and says, let's go.
That's right.
But you're saying it's more than just blind courage.
When it comes to the economy, it's confidence. It's consumer confidence that drives the economy. Our dollar is it's a fiat currency.
Which means it's made, right?
It's made up based on what? Consumer confidence. Or the good faith of the United States Treasury.
But then doesn't that seem, I'd argue that argues, that makes my point, my fear even deeper, because I can't control consumer confidence. There's a fancy word, ephemeral. That's something that just goes with the wind.
So money is movement. We call it currency. So it's constantly flowing.
Well, I never say that. Boy, you got another one today here. Money is currency. of course it's currency, but what else is a current? Like an electric current.
That's right. So it's flowing.
Or a river has a current to it.
That's right. So who is it in good times and bad time, that 5% is still going to make them money.
Because they're moving it around.
Because they're moving it around. So who, based on that currency and based on money being moving, it's always in motion, the people that have the great amount of confidence are going to do best. They're going to do better. Why? They're not driven based on emotion and fear. They're using logic. They're using statistics. They're using their own paradigms.
Well, and communities like you've put together of other experts, of people who are smarter than we
That's
are.
telling people that, hey, look, calm down. Calm down. Take a look at your situation. Take a look at your portfolio. Take a look at your plan. And are you hitting the numbers? Are you hitting the mark based on what your projections and your goals are? And if you are, stay the course.
So let's go back to you just hit another one here. My father's favorite thing, if you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail.
That's right.
Or the reverse one, or the other one he always hit me with is, plan your work and work your plan.
And it's just that basic, and it's just that simple.
But we don't have a plan.
But when you're operating,
I'm trying to survive day to day.
When you're operating in fear, and you don't have a plan, now you become anxious.
Yeah.
And the anxiety starts to set in, and now you're open to suggestions. And now, again, if you hear that same lie over and over and over again, you begin to believe it.
Yeah.
Whether it's true or not.
Right.
And then you begin to act on it, meaning that your circumstances are now dictating how you should respond.
The
versus
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose, and I start to do things that make sure I'm going to lose.
Well, today I want to share with people, I call it my ultimate success story.
Okay.
And what it does, it keeps you focused. It keeps you on track. Now, I do want to give a little bit based on a background as far as how I got to where I am.
Okay. Who are you? Who are you to tell me this ultimate formula for success?
I tell you what, see, growing up as a kid, we used to go to church every Sunday.
Okay.
In my community, that's just something that we did. We went to church every Sunday.
And I still do. I got to tell you, I'm a good Irish Catholic. I still do.
And we read this book. It's a Bible. We went to Sunday school. You went to regular church. You went to evening church, and we read this Bible. Mm-hmm. And as I got older, I decided, well, hey, look, maybe I don't need to go to church as much. And so I started looking at different authors, like whether it was Napoleon Hill, mm-hmm. or whether it was Earl Nightingale or whomever, these people that had these success philosophies. Every time I began to read their books, it kept going back to this one book, the Bible, based on the principles that was in this Bible. So
Bible that you knew very well.
That I knew very well, that I just didn't really connect the dots until I began to listen.
Well, you didn't see it as you saw it as a spiritual guide. You didn't see it as necessarily a life planning guide.
Exactly. So the issue is, all of these guys are saying the same thing. Everything begins with thought. It begins with a thought. It begins with a vision. It begins with what the Bible says, a word. And so once that word...
In the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word became flesh.
Yes, the Word became flesh. Now, what is that? That's the same thing as saying cause and effect, mm-hmm. or energy became matter.
I never thought of it that way. Okay.
The energy became matter. The thought that you were thinking, it manifested itself. But there's a series of events that has to take place between sowing and reaping. We call it cause and effect. But there's a cultivation period that has to take place.
You mean you don't just throw the seed in the ground and then go back and sit on the porch and watch it grow?
That's what we would like to do, but it just
you got to cultivate it. I got to till the soil. I got to pull the weeds.
Everything, there's a pattern to everything. Just like we talked about the accident. There's a pattern, there's a formula, there's a recipe to everything. Just like your grandmother may have had a special recipe for cakes or pies.
Oh, she did, yeah.
And nobody could make them like her.
No, never since.
And you anticipated because you knew exactly what it was going to taste like, because you know what? It tastes exactly the same time after time after time. Why? Because she never variated from her formula.
And the funny thing is, she couldn't tell anybody.
No.
Even her daughters, my mother, she couldn't really tell her what she did. I mean, you were 100%. I mean, you were completely on with my grandma. She was the baking queen, and she, for fun, she would say, let's stitch a pie together, she called it. And my God, it was the greatest pies I've ever had in my life. Now, yeah, I know some of it was homemade. She really rolled the dough and did all these things you don't do. But she just, she'd done it so long and so often that she did it without thinking. It became a permanent pattern of her life. She could do that anytime and you're saying people can do that with money?
They do the same thing with money. They do the same thing with wealth, and the 5% are masters at it. They're following a recipe. They're following a formula. They're following a combination. It's almost like me having a combination lock, and I give you the lock, and I tell you, open this lock. But I never gave you the combination.
Yeah, no, I'm just spinning endlessly here.
Right. So now, guess what I do? I give you the combination, but I don't give you the right sequence, which is called syntax. I don't tell you the right order and sequence to turn the knob. So even though you have the lock, even though you have the combination,
I don't know, do I spin left or right? How many times I go around the dial?
So now once I give you the order and the sequence, guess what? You have the lock, you have the combination, you have the order and sequence. So guess what? It's a miracle. The lock opens.
You know, it's funny. I have a 4-year-old grandson, soon to be 5. And one of the things that amazes me, being a grandfather for the first time, is everything I do for him, it's like I'm Mr. Wizard. And the funny, the favorite story I would tell, I'll just tell this quickly, is we're out in the back watering. I love to work in the garden. And I fill up his little bucket, and he pours it out. And I fill it up again, he pours it out. And I finally said, well, here, pour it into this bucket. He was like, wait, the water didn't disappear. For 4 hours, it seemed like he sat and poured water from one bucket to another. Amazed. Grandpa is the greatest wizard of all time. When I do this, it disappears. But I put it into this magic container, it doesn't disappear, Mr. Wizard.
Right.
We lose some of that as we grow older, that amazement, that wonder. But I wonder if there isn't some value in going back to that sort of childhood discovery.
Well, I tell you again, I went, my success philosophies started in Sunday school.
Mm-hmm.
And
not where I would think entrepreneurs are born here. Maybe ministers or something.
Right, because that's where I got my foundation. So as I began to gain experience and knowledge and understanding as far as how the world works, I went all the way back to whereas, hey, I learned all this in Sunday school.
Well, give us the principles. We're halfway through the show here. So we've set up the problem. Fear is more pervasive than ever. Hopelessness, lack of control. You're saying it starts with understanding how the universe works.
Exactly.
The word, the thought, the energy comes first.
It comes first.
And then you have to put some work into it. And it doesn't just magically appear, but if you have the right thoughts and the right energy and you turn it in, focus it in the right avenue with the right combination.
Well, the second thing you have to do is you have to hear it.
Oh.
You have to hear it.
You're making this difficult.
You have to perceive it. Right. See,
I wanted just the word to come down and descend in front of me, and there it is, and a miracle happens.
Well, there's a term in the Bible, and again, I'm not a Bible scholar, I'm not an expert, but it says, "He that has ears to hear, let him hear." Mm-hmm. So once you hear that word, and once the word manifests, once it comes forth, and you hear it, now you have a decision to make. Your decision is whether you believe it or not.
Yeah.
It's whether you believe it or not. So now we've gone through 3 steps in the process.
I'm sorry, you hit on another one. I hope I'm probably not the only one that does this. It's hard for me to believe good things are going to happen. Good news. It's so much easier to believe that bad thing. You talk about religious traditions. I looked into Buddhism once, and the great Buddha says, what do you remember more, 10 good things or 1 bad thing? The bad things just seem to stick out. It's easy. If I go up and down the hallway here today and I say, I'm a prophet, I've seen the future, I'm going to tell you today is bad. People are going to nod and say, yeah, I can believe that. But Paul, or if I walk up and down the hall, how many of I say the day is going to be good? How many of them go, yeah, I can believe that. More good things happen to you on a daily basis than bad things. That's the truth. That's the absolute truth. That is the truth. Because if bad things happen all the time, I would make it. I mean, if I was just constantly being beat down and beat up and robbed and hurt and hampered, I couldn't get anywhere. Well, we tend to get lazy, Paul. Let me tell you, I heard this one story. This traveling salesman, and he was making house calls door to door, and he went to this one house, and it was a hound dog on the porch. Mm-hmm. And the hound dog was moaning and groaning. So the guy was still trying to have a conversation with the owner of the house. Right. But this dog kept distracting him. He said, well, sir, excuse me, I don't
I don't want to seem unprofessional. He said, but
shut that dog up.
This dog, what's wrong with this dog? He said, oh, don't worry about that dog. He's just over there laying down on a nail. And I was like, what? He said, well, he's laying down on the nail, then why don't he get up? He said, it doesn't hurt bad enough for him to get up. It only hurts bad enough for him to lay there and moan and groan.
Doesn't hurt bad enough. Boy, isn't that our life?
That's our life.
Doesn't hurt bad enough. I'm laying on a nail and I know it, but all I can do is howl about it here.
I used to run a whole lot more than I do now. And there was a guy, he was a cyclist. And I'd be running and he'd be riding his bike. I'd be running and he'd be riding his bike. So finally, our paths crossed enough to where we stopped and had a conversation one day. So based on him riding his bike, he was having problems in his hip. And he was an older guy. He was like, well, yeah, my doctor told me that I had to have surgery. And so now I'm taking all this pain medication and it's starting to affect, my kidneys and stuff.
Right.
So the issue was that I told him the same story about the hound dog. And 2 weeks later, he went in and scheduled his surgery.
There you go.
And guess what? A month and a half later, he's fine. Pain's gone. He's not taking as much pain medicine. So again, we put ourselves in these situations to where it only hurts bad enough for us to complain about it, instead of us acting and doing something about it.
So how do we learn to be actors in our own lives here? How do we not be observers and audience waiting for the next horror scene to hit us?
It goes back to everybody is operating under these patterns. So psychologists call them habits. They call them paradigms. So a paradigm is nothing more than a multitude of habits. So you get your behavior traits begin to dictate what you do and how you feel.
Isn't there a book, The Habits of Highly Successful People?
Absolutely.
Or seven Habits or something?
Yeah, I think it's Stephen Covey wrote that book.
Right,
yes.
Yeah, right.
So it's not that the information is not out there, and it's not that we don't read this stuff. It's just we don't put it in a format to where we understand, just like a recipe.
Or we don't hear it because we're not looking for it. We're hearing the negative and not the good, or we don't believe it. That's what I heard you say.
So it goes back to the belief. And that's why I said, based on my ultimate success story, what you do is everything begins with the word. You hear it, and then the decision that you make is that you believe.
So how did you believe? And we're all kids. We all went to Sunday school. Most of us did, or some sort of religious upbringing. Some of it stuck, and some of it's left. With me, it stuck. Maybe with you, it didn't stick as much, or maybe for whatever reason, we all believed. We all had some belief. They would tell us these wild stories of Moses and the miracles and all this stuff, and we believed when I was a kid. It's only later on that we start to question and not sure we believe anything anymore.
We have levels of belief. Mm-hmm. We have levels of belief, just like a dollar. A dollar can be broken down into 100 pennies, 4 quarters, 10 dimes, 20 nickels. Those are levels of a dollar. So the issue is you still got the dollar, or you still have that dollar based on your account, but you may only be using a dime or a nickel or a quarter at a time.
Well, and a bigger point is a dollar's really not worth anything unless we all believe that we can get something for it. The minute we stop believing in that currency, this is worthless. I'm not going to get anything from this.
It's monopoly money at that point.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything. It's almost like the same thing with cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency. I was thinking the same thing right now. The only thing that creates any value in cryptocurrency is the belief.
It's the belief system. Yeah. So it's the same pattern, Paul. That's what I'm saying. It's the same pattern. It's just a different book, or it's just a different arena. And it's just like people coming out and they're talking about certain truths. It's not that principle hasn't existed for thousands of years. It's just your opportunity. It's your time to share that truth.
But don't we sort of live in post-truth times? Everything is fake news. Everything we doubt.
If that's what you believe.
We trust nobody anymore. Everybody's let us down. My priests have let me down. The politicians have let me down. The professional athletes have let me down. The movie star, whoever I look to for guidance, I seem to be on my own. I seem to live in a post-fact world.
Everything you just explained are external.
Yeah.
Every example that you just gave is external. It's a byproduct. It's a result. Your life is driven from the inside out, not from the outside in. So if you decide to let those things throw you off, then you're going to reap what you sow.
And I decided it.
Decided.
The great, I'm going to be a little philosophical here. The great Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius the Roman, I think he was a Roman emperor.
Yes,
or
yes, he
something.
was.
A quote somebody gave me once, I've never forgotten it, said, "You can't change what happens to you, but you can change how you react to it."
Exactly. 100% of the time. Just like you can't change people. People change themselves.
Right.
Same thing.
So how do we change ourselves here? We got 10 minutes left. To give me the quick pep talk or steps to making some change in my life.
The next step after you believe is that you have to work, or you have to do it.
Yeah.
Because just like in the Bible, faith without works is what? Is dead. So
That's true. Because it works alone. If faith without the good works doesn't mean anything.
You hear people talking. They'll talk about it. They'll talk a good game, but they're not doing anything.
Well, I see it every week at church. Everybody listens, and we all hug and shake hands, and then we go out and cut each other off and flip each other off as we're trying to pull our race out of the parking lot here. It lasts about that long.
Exactly. So that shows you your level of belief at that point. Because you're not manifesting.
Belief. So first you got to have the word, the thought, the energy, the idea.
Then you have to hear it.
You got to hear it and believe it.
And then believe it. And then you have to act on it.
Okay. Good works.
So after that, well, actually, the issue is you reinforce the action by speaking it.
You know, that's a key. I'll give you another odd example. My mother had a brain injury late in life. She was struck by lightning, of all the craziest things around. I've never known anybody struck by lightning and live, but she did. Messed up her body bad. And one of the things she had to do to recover, she couldn't talk, she couldn't do lots of things, is she had to do what they called multimodality learning. For her to learn something, she had to read it, she had to write it, and then she had to say it out loud.
Yes.
If she didn't do those 3 steps, it didn't stick in her head. And it sounded silly, but she'd read it. First she'd read it, and then she'd physically write it down, which was hard to do for her.
Yes.
And then to speak it out loud, which sounded ridiculous. But when she did that, it manifested. It changed. It stuck with her.
It probably took a PhD 16 years to get the education and then create a practice to actually give somebody that principle when I learned the same thing in Sunday school.
Yeah, right, because you write it on they write it on the board, you write it on the board, and then you all say it out loud, and there's a certain
show and tell.
Yeah.
We used to have show and tell in school.
Multimodality learning, they called it here. Okay.
So again, once you believe something and then you speak that word and then you act on it. So what Napoleon Hill called speaking is his auto-suggestion or self-suggestion. He wrote this book called The Law of Success. And he put, he had
famous book.
Yeah.
And he talked and for those who haven't seen it, so many people are familiar with it, particularly business people. If you haven't seen it, go look it out. I've seen a copy of it. He basically tried to study 3 people. I think it was Henry Firestone, Henry Ford, and I've forgotten Thomas Edison.
Thomas Edison, yes.
And 3 of the most, they were the Elon Musks of their day. They were the Jeff Bezos, the Bill Gates, pick whoever you want. They were the superstars in business in those days. And what made them tick? And apparently they were friends and actually got together and would brainstorm or kick ideas around it.
Right, and it was Andrew Carnegie that actually gave him the commission to actually do this. So
to study these people.
So he set up the introductions.
And so he studied these 3 very famous, highly successful people in 3 different areas altogether, 2 industrialists and 1 inventor. And out of that, he came up with some principles that
16 principles.
Yeah.
And he put it in a book, and the wealthy elite went crazy.
Yeah.
So we had to take the book off the market because he felt like they felt like you're giving the straw away. you gave everybody our formula
for success.
So what he did was he took it off the market, he repackaged it, and put it back on the market in a book called Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, Think and Grow Rich. And since then it's been the godfather of so many other self-help books, particularly business books out there.
So he'll tell you in Think and Grow Rich, that philosophy, that book centers, the core of that book is auto-suggestion, meaning that when you begin to, because you're suggesting, it goes from the conscious mind to the subconscious.
I can do it. I can do it.
You can do it. So the issue is whether it's conscious, doesn't matter. The issue, it has to be subconscious in order for you to act on it. So it's the belief, the auto-suggestion or the self-suggestion, which you have to speak it, then you have to act on it. Then from the
'Cause
action,
thinking's not enough. Doing's not enough.
No.
You got to say it too. You
have to say it.
Put it out loud. Sometimes people, it's like writing your goals out or speaking your goals or putting yourself out there. As people say, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to publicly commit to. That's why we get married and stuff here. We're going to publicly commit to these things, right?
Yes. I mean, even the Bible says take the vision and write it down. You write it down. There's a reason. There's a pattern. There's a formula that's going on that most people don't know about. Sometimes they do it without even thinking about it. But when you can physically, consciously do something, your belief in that thing begins to increase, because if I did it once, I can do it again.
Yeah, right.
And so you've done it enough times. Now you're doing it in your sleep.
Well, we've done this enough for today. I think you've opened my eyes to the opportunities of not just reacting to the world, but living in the world, taking charge.
But before we sign off, though, again, once you act on something, this is where people this is where they fail, Paul. They're good at starting stuff, but they're lousy at finishing.
Boy, it's this time of year, New Year's resolutions.
Right.
We all make them, and then they all fall by the wayside.
Yeah, there was a guy on TV yesterday. He was just interviewing people, and we're still in January, beginning of January. He was asking people, how, you set this New Year's resolution, and have you fulfilled it yet? It's like, have you started on it? No, I'm going to start on it tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to start the diet tomorrow. But the issue is once you make that decision, once you act on it, you have to persist.
Yes.
That's when perseverance kicks in. And your persistence and your perseverance will let you know how strong your belief in this, whatever you're doing.
And boy, isn't that the history of religion in the Bible, in particular, in general, persisting in the face of opposition. Jonah and the whale, inside, it's insurmountable. It's never ending. God, why are you doing this to me? Well, just keep persisting and you'll find a way through it.
And there are even stories in there that say, well, this lady went to this judge. Judge was corrupt, but, the reason he granted her request is because she wouldn't stop. She kept coming back.
Yeah.
There's another story where, the guy, he had some relatives over. He needed some bread. He went to the baker. The baker was closed. His kids were in bed. But the guy kept knocking on the door. So the baker got up and gave him what he wanted because he knew he wasn't going to go away. Napoleon Hill said the same thing in Think and Grow Rich, where it was this little girl. She needed some 50 cents from the guy was in the meal. Her mother wanted the 50 cents. So the guy said, no, I'm not going to give you 50 cents. He turned around and went back to working, and she was still there. Mm-hmm. So he turned back around and said, hey, didn't I tell you to get out of here? I'm not going to give you 50 cents. So he walked towards her in a very
confrontational way. Get the hell out of here.
But the girl, she stood her ground and said, my mother's got to have that 50 cents. So the mother actually gave her the suggestion to say, don't take no for an answer.
Right.
I need this 50 cents to take care of something. So what did the owner did? He reached in his pocket. He gave the girl 50 cents. So the issue was that the moral to that story is that persistence is what gets us over the hump.
Well, I hope people persistently listen to this show, because you're definitely striking a drum, a beat, a thought that is not in the popular mind right now. It's that we can adapt and grow. Once you
persist, the manifestation takes effect. And after whatever it is that your goal, once you've achieved that goal, you have to rest. That's a part of the formula which most people miss. They either rest too much, or they don't get enough
rest. Or they don't rest at all.
Right.
Just you get the 50 cents, go back and get another one. Hey, we got to rest. You've given me some food for thought.
Perfect segue.
All right. Tell us how we get in touch with you if we want to learn more about your philosophy.
You're going to go to www.tyronefrench.com, or you're going to go to www.tyronefrench.app.
And what you're really offering the world is an opportunity to think differently, as you've learned to do, and the opportunity through your coaching, or the community you're developing, to find others to help, because it's not easy. You can't do it alone. You need help. You need support. It's why you go to the gym with a buddy. It's pretty soon you need somebody motivating you, pushing you, holding you accountable, not just opening your eyes to new ideas, but helping you do it together.
Well, Paul, I'm a voice in the wilderness, and what I'm doing is I'm giving people another choice. and what they do with that choice, with the decision
Can they hear it?
that they
Do they
make.
believe it? And do they take action on it?
That's right.
All right. We're going to take action right now and bring this one to a close. Take action. Give us your website one more time.
www.tyronefrench.com.
All right. Look forward to the next example of closing the wealth gap. You've been listening to another example of closing the wealth gap. One way to reprogram yourself to make more of opportunities, to make less of challenges, and to find a way to take control of your financial future.